The Shelby Cobra. It's a legend. If you want one today, it'll set you back at least $1 million. Not everybody has that sort of money, but they still want the car. Enter the one behind me. This one, a Factory 5 replica. Will I be impressed? Let's find out. Well, I'm definitely impressed with the shape. It looks like the original. It would fool a lot of people. The proportions look correct, although most of these today have been made slightly larger. This one was built by someone who's 6'4", so it'll accommodate people of just about any size. The racing stripe, the roll bars, the side exhaust, it looks awesome and authentic too. Despite the way it looks, you can't help but to hear that sound. Amazing. There's nothing like the throaty sound of a big American engine and all that horsepower. The interior is faithful to the original too. Very Spartan. The racing seats, of course, keep you nice and snug, and the 4-point harnesses make sure you stay in tight. There's a large central tunnel here, which just has the 5-speed stick, and on the side there you have a real handbrake. The steering wheel has a 5 there for Factory 5, but I guess it could also look like an S for Shelby. Straight ahead, you got a speedometer and a tachometer, most important. There's a series of switches here to help you control the lights. And of course, only the necessary gauges. You got a water temperature, you got fuel, you got oil, you got volts, and you've got oil temperature too. It's a very small box for your feet there, and the pedals are really positioned a bit left. Takes some getting used to, but they're all right there and easy to use once you get used to them. It's always good to have a fire extinguisher in a sports car that may see some track time. As I said before, the interior is very Spartan with everything you need and nothing you don't. It is faithful to the original, and that's what's most important. A very cool interior and really all about the business of going fast. This gas filler cap is definitely authentic. It has the right look. Very cool. The trunk is also Spartan, but it does have some room in it. In this case, there's a tonneau cover and sort of a donut spare tire and a battery here. Originally in the Cobra, you had an engine that was a 260 or 289. That's 4.3 or 4.7 liters. Later on with the 427, engines grew to up to 7 liters. Of course, this being a Factory 5 replica, you can really put in anything you like. In this case, the Mark III here has a 400 horsepower, 351 Windsor engine, and it only weighs 2,100 pounds. So that's some serious engine for a car of this size. You're talking about 0 to 60 times of in the 3-second range and a quarter-mile time in the 11s. It's certainly very, very quick. Not that you care about fuel economy, but if you do, you're definitely going to get in the single figures, maybe around 8 or 9 miles per gallon if you drive it like it's stolen. You can get maybe up into the teens on the highway if you just keep it in 5th gear at highway speeds. So when Shelby had the idea to produce a sports car with a big American engine and a British performance sports car chassis, the idea wasn't new. Allard had actually done it 25 years earlier, and actually Carroll Shelby wanted to use a Chevy engine, but Chevy was worried about their Corvette and that this car might compete with it, so they said no. So he went to Ford, and really the rest is history. They took the AC Ace chassis and shoved the big American engine inside, and there you have it. The car was extremely successful in racing in the United States. Now it was less successful in Europe because the tracks are longer there and top speed is more of a thing. And because of this one's coefficient of drag, its top speed was limited. That's why eventually they built the Cobra Daytona Coupe, and I've actually done a story on that one. I spoke with Pete Brock about that car and about Carroll Shelby, so check out my review of that one elsewhere on YouTube. Also check out my truck. I have a Shelby Dakota truck. You can see those elsewhere on YouTube, but this Shelby here is, of course, the Factory 5 replica. Now, cars continue to be built after 1967 with appropriate serial numbers that basically went in sequential order, and those are called continuation cars. But once the values of these cars went up, even Shelby took advantage by really reproducing some of his own cars, and really has set the industry on fire with Cobras. They were so successful and they built up such a reputation that everybody wanted one, and not everyone can have one when they're $1 million. So companies like Factory 5 here, which started in 1995, really stepped in, and they've helped people realize the dream of owning a Cobra of their own. You can get these cars built really any way you like them, with a small V8 or a large V8. Some people even supercharge or turbocharge them. It really depends on what you're going for and how much money you have to spend. The cost of building one of these is probably about $10,000, $15,000 just to get you started. If you want a turnkey car built by yourself, well, you're probably looking at about $30,000 to $40,000 depending on what sort of engine you go for, what sort of transmission, how fancy you want to get with the build, and how fancy you want to get with the paint. But this car was actually built by a father-son team, and that's really a great project. You can really learn a lot about cars and have a great experience bonding with your child or family member or whomever if you want to go ahead and build one of these in your own private workshop. So companies like Factory 5 have really stepped in, and they've made it easy for a crafty person to go ahead and build their own dream car. And that's really what it's all about. It looks the part and it sounds the part too. This version here is the Mark III. They've actually just released the Mark V version, so they've come along in productions, but you can still get one of these today, or you can go out and buy a used one. If you go out and buy a used one that's completely built, well, you can certainly do that, and the prices for those I've seen range from about $15,000 all the way up to about $80,000, depending on how they're equipped and how big the engines are and the level of finish and that sort of thing. So if you want this wind in your hair, wild ride, taming the snake experience, you can have it. But I gotta say, it's not a super easy car to drive. I had some fun with it in a very private, off-public road location and got the back end loose a bit, so I feel I've tamed the snake a bit. You can definitely control this car. It's very easy to get out of the line, but very predictable as well. But that being said, this is not a car for everyone. This car is fast. This car is loud, and it's difficult to drive. No power steering, and the throttle is very responsive. You can be going at very illegal speeds very quickly. So it's not for everyone, but if you want to relive that classic Deuce Coupe experience, man, this is it. This is what the Beach Boys were singing about. Now this is what you want to see ahead of you. A snaky, unintended, twisty road up in front of you. But you want to be careful, because you know you can get this car loose anytime you want to. As I said, it's certainly not easy to drive. It's easy to drive fast, but the technical aspects of driving, like the small footwell, make it pretty difficult to drive. In terms of shifting, you know, it's not those short, sticky throws that you get in a Miata per se, but they are pretty precise. There's nothing like the wood steering wheel. You know you're driving a vintage, classy sports car. Feels great in your hands, but it is definitely not easy to steer at slow speeds. No power steering here. Also, no traction control, so driver, beware. There's no radio. Why would you want a radio when you can hear this? The Shelby is definitely the stuff of legends, and there was actually a version built called the Super Steak that really is legendary. Basically, Shelby wanted a personal car, and he wanted to be able to drive from California to Vegas with his fast driving friends. Back then there was really no speed limit, so he built a super fast version of it, and that one's called the Super Snake, and it's legendary, number one, because Bill Cosby wanted one. Shelby wanted him to quit driving Ferraris and drive one of his cars, so basically he made one for him and he bought it, and Bill Cosby was too scared to drive it, actually. He actually ended up getting rid of it, and that's the whole shtick about 200 miles per hour, and Bill Cosby actually named one of his comedy albums about it. But basically all the legends have to do with the fact that this was a very successful racing car. And when you win on Sunday, you sell on Monday. So when cars are successful in racing, they become successful and they become legends. And of course, Shelby is known for his many, many legendary victories throughout motoring history. He was actually a successful driver, and he actually had a health problem way back in the late 50s, and they didn't give him long to live back then. He actually survived and lived a very, very long time. I was lucky enough to meet him, actually, and though he couldn't see very well, I did get him to sign a picture of himself and the Cobra. So that's definitely something that I'll treasure forever. But that's because of the legend. The Shelby Cobra is an amazing car. Of course, it has an amazing history, too. They say the only thing that this Shelby Cobra can't pass is a gas station. And that's certainly true. I haven't been driving it too long, and I'm already down to basically less than a half a tank, and the tank was full when I started. You don't want to drive this car for its fuel economy. You know, I didn't really know what to expect before driving this Shelby Cobra Factory 5 copy. I've never driven one before, and it's certainly one of those iconic automobiles. It's definitely a car of legends. It's the stuff of legends. So you're not quite sure what to think when you meet your favorite celebrity or drive one of your bucket list cars. I drove a Heritage Jaguar E-Type Superlight, and that was sort of like this. That was just as iconic. Check out my review of that one. But I have been impressed. This one brings the Cobra into a modern era, and more importantly, it brings it to the masses. You can actually afford to own and drive this one. It's not $1 million car, but you're also not giving up any of that amazing stuff. You're not giving up any of the history. You're just gaining a little bit of luxury. You're gaining a bit of room. If you're extremely tall, you can actually fit in this one, whereas many people might not have been able to fit in an original Cobra. It was a bit smaller inside, but really, this one is the best of all worlds. I think Factory 5 has done an amazing job of keeping the legend alive, and like I said, most importantly, bringing it to the people that really cherish this sort of driving experience. You can build this Factory 5 Cobra really any way you like it. You can set it up for the track, you can autocross it, or you can just enjoy it on roads like I'm driving today. Or you can just take it to car shows and just drive it around town and have people just oogle over it like they've been doing today. I've gotten a lot of response just in the short time I've driven it. So that's what owning a car like this is all about. It's all about the driving, it's all about the ownership experience, it's all about the speed, but it can also be all about building it. Whatever it is you want to get out of this, you can get it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, subscribe to me on YouTube. Thanks for watching. I'm Drivin Ivan.